Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gurnam Singh, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Sikh Think Tank special series with the Sikh Human Rights Group, looking at Sikhi and the global challenges facing humanity. In today's show, we will be focusing on the concept of Langar, the right to food, and the issue of global food security. Now, in Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji states, "Kal khai kich hatho de, Nanak raho pashane se." In other words, one who works for what he eats and gives some of that, what he has, Nanak, this is the true path. Now, the most powerful material expression of this principle is the concept of Langar, or the practice of Langar, or free community kitchen, which stands as a defining institution of Sikh Gurdwaras across the world. And in its most powerful manifestation, this practice is found at the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar, where an estimated 100,000 people from all faiths and none are fed around the clock each day, 365 days a year. The meal is always vegetarian, always free, and prepared entirely through voluntary labour and donations. It is service as devotion and service as in the best way possible. Now, although deeply embedded in Sikh tradition, actually Langar's roots extend back into the Sufi traditions of Islam. And the very word Langar itself comes from the Persian, meaning anchor or resting place. And it's also associated with ships and where ships would be anchored in rivers and seas. Now, with the arrival of Guru Nanak in Punjab in the 15th century, this ethos was expanded and institutionalized. The foundational story of Sacha Sauda, the true bargain, captures the heart of the Langar tradition. And centuries before the birth of modern-day welfare states, in that moment, Guru Nanak Dev Ji replaced the logic of commerce with the logic of collective welfare. But tragically today, though there's enough food to feed everyone around the planet, according to the UN Hunger Report, 2.83 billion people, or almost a third of all humanity, cannot afford a healthy diet. And 8% of people actually go to bed hungry every night. And probably the most damning statistic is that over 3 million children die each year due to malnutrition. Now, if there ever was a genocide, then this is a true genocide. And in tonight's show, through the concept of Langar, the lens of the Langar, we will explore how we can address what is a terrible crime against humanity. Nobody should go hungry. And, we've got a great panel today to help us along. So I'm going to introduce our panel. First of all, I'm going to introduce Ivan Lorenzi Di Francisco. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hi, thank you for having us. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. I'll just say a bit about Ivan. Ivan is a UN representative in Geneva and New York for the Sikh Human Rights Group. He holds a graduate and postgraduate degrees in economics and international relations. And this diverse educational background has enabled him to develop a deep understanding and analytical capability regarding issues at the intersection of economics and human rights. We also have Dr. Jasdev Singh Rai. Jasdev ji, welcome to you as well. A medical professional, Dr. Jasdev is a director of the Sikh Human Rights Group, which was founded in 1985 after the aftermath of the June 1984 attack on the Darbar Sahib and the Delhi massacres in November of 1984, with the expressed aim to advocate for Sikh human rights in India. From 1993, the group expanded its interest to include diversity, sustainable development, seva, and governance. And since 2015, it has had special consultative status at the United Nations. Jasdev is also a journalist and regularly publishes articles on geopolitics in the online magazine Lokmarg. And last but not least, we've got Harmeet Singh. Harmeet, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Formerly General Secretary of Singh Sabha Southall, where he oversaw many innovations during his tenure. By profession, he's a chartered accountant, and Harmeet has been active in broadening the scope of Sikh engagement in local, national, and international arenas, especially in the fields of education and human development. And in November, as you can see from the images, Harmeet presented at the United Nations led second World Summit for Social Development in Doha. So hopefully we can hear a bit more about that as well. So, Ivan, I'm going to begin with you. As a non-Sikh, I guess, as well, you might want to give your own perspective and reflections on the concept of Langar, but most importantly, how the concept of Langar might be relevant to the UN, policy around the right to food as a human right, and what might be the ethical challenges that governments are facing in translating this fundamental human right into a universal reality. Ivan.
Yeah, so first we could approach this issue by defining what the UN thinks about the right to food, which is the physical and economic access to sufficient and safe and nutritious food for all. So it's not only that any given country has the necessary amount of food to feed their people, but also make that food accessible to them. And what the point of Langar, it is approaching, or one of the points, or one of the advantages is that Langar approaches or narrows the distance between the food and the people, not only in a material way, because of the numerous gurdwaras and langars that you will find all over the world, but also because of the kind of access any given people has to Langar. Langar, you go to Langar as an equal member of the society. Any given person, no matter their socioeconomic status, can go there and eat at the same level as, be it rich or more humble background. So it is narrowing the distances and making accessible to fulfill the right to food of the peoples.
That's really good. We've lost your image, but what we'll do is we'll just continue. But when I go to the other guests, if you could try and log on again. But just one further question around this. So the UN has got a express policy for that. What do you think are the major blocks then in not being able to implement it? Not least given that there's enough food in the world to feed the whole world. What are the blockages?
Um, I think that the main blockages are not around, for example, right to food, but it is about gathering certain resources, and this, let's say, power politics about certain things, about, for example, rare materials, block partnerships in other areas, such as, for example, telecommunications, or, for example, in the right to food. Food is something that it's no matter the nationality, the citizenship of any given person, has to fulfill certain basic needs like food, but blockages, non-cooperation in certain areas block by default other, such as the right to food, right to safe water and sanitation, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you very much. Just Steph, I'm going to come over to you now if I can. Actually, if we think about the concept of Langar, as I said in the introduction, it goes back a long way. It goes back maybe even pre-Sikh times. But what is it about the Langar that really makes it different from, say, normal charity giving or food aid and the kind of stuff that we have in terms of, say, food banks and things? What is unique about the Langar?
Okay, there are two, in fact, three very fundamental aspects about Langar. The first is it does not depend on the state to take action. Eh?
Mm.
What happens with the state, with the governing system, is governments come, governments go. Some governments might decide they want to make food free for children or food available for people, poor people, and that sort of thing. Other governments might think, well, no, we need money for other things, and they cut this down, and people go into poverty and hunger. So it's not dependent on the state. It's cut the state, the community taking action by itself to deal with a problem which is prevalent everywhere in the world. The second thing is we need to be very clear. The concept of aid is a relationship, a power relationship with the donor and the recipient. Okay? The donor thinks he's got money, he's in a powerful position, and he gives it to as a charity to somebody who receives. Now you go to Langar, that relationship is completely destroyed, finished. Nobody feels they are needy, nobody feels humiliated, nobody feels that they are in power. Everybody, a person who may have the most expensive Bugatti in the world and a person who's probably only got a cycle, they sit on the floor and eat. And Akbar sat there and our queen also sat on the floor and ate Langar. So Langar takes away the relationship of power. It's there on the floor. The third thing is that it's the community dealing with itself. There's a spiritual context behind it, and there's a concept of sharing. We're sharing with everybody. We're sharing what we have. We give it to the Guru, and the Guru gives it to everybody. So around Gurdwaras at least in Punjab, there should be nobody hungry. In Delhi as well, around Gurdwaras, there's nobody hungry. Whenever there is a Gurdwara in India, there is nobody hungry. And it has it's extinguished hunger or eliminated hunger around where the Gurdwaras are, where the Sikhs are. Without the
That's
help of the
really good.
state, without the help of any writing and things like that.
That's really important. Maybe I'll bring Harmeet in on that point. Harmeet, if somebody offers money in the Langar, to us, that's the greatest insult that could be given to us. So what is it about the Langar that is so unique? Yeah, or is it unique? Tell us something about its own kind of background. And also, I know that you spoke at the UN, and Singh Sabha Gurdwara itself, runs maybe the biggest Langar in the UK. So what is it about our need to maybe take the Langar outside? Should we be taking it outside? Was it meant just for Sikhs to be confined into distributing Gurdwara? And what are the blockages in maybe expanding this to become a universal service? Yeah, and there's lots of questions there, but just however you want to tackle that. Yeah.
No, thank you, Dr. Firstly, for this opportunity. I mean, just building on Dr. Rai's point and what you've just asked, the lack of preconditions is what makes Langar so unique. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji, through the Sacha Sauda Sakhi, we learn that principle of what Guru Nanak Dev Ji's economic vision was. It's not about pure profit. It's not just about amassing as much material for oneself, but actually using the earth's resources to help all of humanity. And the beauty of Langar, whereas unlike other charity-based projects where there is a donor, he donates, he sets conditions, you can only use money for this or that, Langar does away with all that. You truly have to be selfless. So anyone who's donating, whether it's a bag of atta, a pallet of atta, £100,000 towards Langar, they can't set any rules. That's the beauty of it. You have to sincerely give, because the concept afterwards has been established now for over 5 centuries. It's very simple. It will only be used for a simple, sustainable, nourishing vegetarian meal, which has the most economies of scale as well. So the system Guru Nanak Dev Ji established for us is perfect, right? The Guru is perfect and the system is perfect. And you can see by even those simple things of only having a vegetarian one made sense. It's the cheapest way to feed as many people as possible. And then the other side of it is, so we know fundamental need is food. Every human needs food to survive. And however wealthy a nation becomes, however much wealth has been created in 2025 Earth, there is still immense inequality and poverty, and people still suffer. You said it at the onset. The stats are still damning and shocking, and they don't seem to be getting much better every year. Inequality keeps rising. So that hunger is never going to go away, and Guru Nanak Dev Ji created this great system which can be embedded in all other aspects of the economy if we took those concepts into it. So I had the opportunity to go to the United Nations, the development conference, which fundamentally is about just making the world a better place, making it sustainable, getting people out of poverty, and And sharing the idea of Langar is about driving that message that Guru Nanak Dev Ji established 550 odd years ago, of you can do things sincerely, selflessly, but which have a massive, massive impact. And one of the unique things I've always found in Southall, and in fact any Langar you go to, it's not just those who are receiving Langar benefit, but actually the sevadars. So when you get a chance to do seva, yes, it's hatti seva. We know all the gun that come with that, but in a physical level, think about all our Bazurga elders, especially say the auntie, uncle, you're retired. What do you do with your free time? Spend it in the langar, do seva. You're interacting, you're physical. If the langar hall wasn't there, just think what that generation would do. They'd be sitting at home, isolated on their own. So actually think about the beauty of the concept. Even when you are doing that activity, you're cleansing your soul, but actually it's good for you, right? You're actually physically, actively, mentally doing something. So langar actually is not just helping the recipient of the physical food, but actually those making it, those washing the pande. And there is no other institution like that. And food banks have limited times of the year, whereas the langar is 24/7, any day of the week, no conditions attached. And that's what makes it so unique, is just the openness, whether you're rich or poor, whether you can be a doctor, you can be an asylum seeker, you'll be in the langar hall together, cooking, cleaning, or even eating. And there is nowhere else on this planet where that inclusive, equality driven concept exists.
Yeah. So I'll just following that up then. I mean, I think when I asked the question and I asked Dr. Rai that, and you could come in, how is Langar different from charitable giving? The UN, for example, had the World Food Programme. UN has stores and stores of food, which it takes to disaster areas and where there maybe is famine. So how is Langar different to the kind of work that is being done across the world? People like Khalsa Aid and others. I mean, is it aid? Is Langar about, is Langar aid an oxymoron, or is that what it's about?
Well, fundamentally, it's there to feed those who need food, right? So it is serving a need there. It was created to those who were in absolute need. But of course, there's one thing I found when aid agencies, when Khalsa Aid, they all do amazing work. The UN, relief agencies, they do amazing work, but they only act in absolute situations of desperation. And
emergency.
Normally it's when it's in emergency, exactly when it's too late. So that's not sustainable, right? They're there, they'll save them from sort of almost from death, but then they'll leave them to it after that. It's not sustainable. Langar, on the other hand, is sustainable because the way it works, it's funded by those who have, but in a way it uplifts those who do not. In the UK, for example, let's take example of our Punjabi Veers who've come over from Punjab as a students. They can't afford, housing's expensive, food is expensive. Most places they live in these days on rent, they're not allowed to even cook in the kitchens of the houses they're renting in. So they actually can't even cook their own food. But the langar actually serves a massive economic benefit for them. It means they can afford, they can eat for free. The money they save, they can reinvest in their education, getting on the housing ladder. It has a massive economic boost, even in the UK for individuals.
That's really brilliant. And we talk about the Pangat, and that this Langar isn't just about feeding; it's about equity and about kind of breaking down divisions. And I guess I was just wondering, whether the concept of Langar goes beyond just nutrition, beyond its function of providing food, and that in fact it becomes this shared space of communal eating. And they say that families that eat together stay together. And I guess you could extend that to societies, communities and societies that eat together, stay together. And do you think Langar has something there around building community cohesion, maybe? We had some of that when we had the COVID lockdown, where all of a sudden the Langar became this universal service, or certainly a service for not just Sikhs or those who attend the Gurdwara. And is there a need to maybe break away this notion that Langar is kind of religious food, holy food, because that in itself might create barriers? Harmeet, did you get that?
On your first point, of course, the benefits, the mental benefits, the physical benefits of a shared meal is well researched and documented. Eating on your own, we know the problems with isolation, living in your own. We know the challenges and problems it creates. So Langar does have a massive impact on one's physical and mental well-being, cooking together, eating together, just having someone beside you, sitting as equals. You don't feel don't feel inferior to anyone. So that has a massive positive impact on someone who goes to Guru ka Langar. And I mean, that's Guru Sahib was beyond that. That's what they were trying to do, is uplift people. The dead is full, but also mentally they're feeling stronger because they're not feeling alone. And Joey, if you mind just on the last question.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that whether the Langar itself could become a kind of a mechanism for building community cohesion, extending beyond the Sikh community to all communities.
Absolutely. I mean, we already see that in the UK, and especially in the Western countries, the number of non-Sikhs who get involved in cooking, cleaning, serving. I mean, when I was at South Gurdwara Singh Sabha, we used to get the army in, workplaces who'd often go out to volunteer. They wanted to help out in the langar. In fact, in some Gurdwara I know, actually a lot of non-Sikhs benefit and use langar because they happen to live in an area. There's a Gurdwara, there's deprivation, poverty. So in a lot of areas, it's helping non-Sikhs. And I don't think it's ever been a challenge for people to come and thinking, oh, I must be a Sikh to only eat in the langar. And that's the beauty of Guru's langar. The whole saying, Pangat before Sangat. And that's probably why Guru Sahib didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable coming to a Gurdwara. And what better way to build that comfort and trust in Sikhi? You come in, you have some langar, you get to meet the fellow Sikhs, and hopefully that encourages you to want to go into the Darbar, have Guru's darshan, and perhaps even follow Guru's way.
Ivan, can I bring you back in now? I don't know if you've managed to get onto the screen, but if not, we've got an image. Can you hear me, Ivan?
Yes, I'll try again then because it
Well,
didn't
never
work
mind.
first.
We've got an image of you, but I just want you to take you back to some of the statistics that I was giving. I mean, they're quite damning statistics. We've had the UN now for over 70 years, well, maybe just about 70 years, and the UN has very clear policies. Oh, you're back with us. That's good.
Yeah.
Very clear kind of around food. Yet 3 million children die each year. I mean, the models that the UN seems to be working with simply aren't working, are they?
Sorry, could you repeat because it was in the middle of the join when
I was
got
just
joining
saying that. I mean, you heard the statistics that I shared at the beginning around a third of humanity not being able to afford a healthy diet, 3 million children dying each year due to malnutrition. Yet the UN is supposed to be there to support the most vulnerable. It's obviously failing. Why is it failing, and how can Langar maybe offer a new model?
First, it is true that the UN could do more, but I mean, we need when before accusing the UN or in order to solve a problem, we need to study the context, no? And the UN it's an international organization which functions only if the countries that are members of the UN work together. So first of all, then in the case that every country aligns and focus on the same topic, then we have, for example, in this to feed the hunger, a logistical problem. You could have all the resources to end hunger, what we have, but we need political will and also all the logistics to allow to bring the food to where it's needed. And regarding how Langar could help in tackling this issue, I think it's a, let's say, heterodox approach, and it would be quite interesting and useful to approach it because as Harmeet Singh mentioned, it is a tool that it is autonomous. It doesn't depend from the state. It is the community that supports, and especially those who are more able to support financially or with their time and effort to keep it running. Second, no matter your faith, where do you come from, your social status, you would be accepted there. And it is for those reasons I think it's worth to promote it, to keep people informed about it. And because even in countries such as the US, many people or even delegates from the member states are not aware that these kind of tools are available to share.
That's really good. Just Dave, I'm going to come back to you. Thwaditongan. One of the questions is around the economics of Langar. Now, whilst it's based on voluntary donations, you still have to get the money from somewhere. The food isn't for free, and isn't one of the drawbacks of universalizing the Langar is that Diri Langar, the concept here, it's based on voluntarism. And that has its own obstacles because not everybody wants to volunteer. Not everybody donates. So that's the first challenge. But the second one is maybe that if we really want to expand this concept of Langar, isn't it actually challenging the economic models of how food is procured, how it's grown, how it's commodified, and how it's sold? And we're challenging this as a global economic order, or trying to disrupt that. I mean, or can both exist? Can we have a universal kind of a provision of free food and still have this commoditized food production, distribution, consumption system? Andy, just there, were you with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hanji.
Yeah. One of the reasons why there is so much hunger is because the big transnational corporations have, as you say, commodified food. Okay, so they control it. They control how much it is available in the market and at what price. If they make it cheaper, then they don't make profit. So they ensure that it's expensive enough for them to make a profit and not cheap enough so that everybody gets fed. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why there is so much hunger around the world. And those big transnationals control governments, particularly in the West and some other countries. Now, yes, the Langar is a challenge to that system of governance in the world. Okay, where finance, transnational corporations control much of what the UN decides and what is actually being permitted or what it deliver on the ground. Langar, on the other hand, I mean, Darbar Sahib is an example. 100,000 people eating every day, and on a Gurpurab, it's even more than that. It's over 2 or 3 times more than that. Okay, it's the same in Southall. On an average Sunday, there's about 8 to 10,000 people. On a Vasak, it's about 20 to 30,000 people. Okay, now where's the money coming from? It's not coming from state. It's not coming from taxes. People are giving. People feel a spiritual need to connect with everybody, spiritual need to give to the Guru and give it to the people. And this model can be replicated elsewhere. There are Gurdwaras, for instance, in Kenya, the Mukindo Gurdwara is famous. It doesn't just serve the Sikhs there. It's there's a lot of the African population who come and eat there, and they don't so there's no hunger around that region. In Delhi as well, a lot of the non-Sikhs go and eat in the gurdwaras there. Okay? So yeah, the model is sustainable. It will be interesting if some other community takes it, how they will implement it. Will the multinationals interfere and say, "Oh, this is becoming too popular now. It is going to undermine our hegemony in the food industry, our control of the food industry," and will they then pervert it in some way? We don't know. But I think Langar works because the state is not involved. Langar works because
Okay.
it's by the people, for the people, with the people.
Well, that's an interesting question because I was thinking whether the Langar was a kind of a socialist, communist kind of concept, but you're saying actually that the essence is that it's not, the state is not involved. That's the key feature of the Langar, that it's a non-state universal welfare provision. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Sikhs often do is they misunderstand the concepts of Gurmat and Gursikhi. I'm not talking about you, but generally, and related to socialism or that sort of thing, or humanitarianism and all that sort of thing. Okay, behind Langar is a spiritual context. It's the Gurbani, it's the teaching of Gurbani about the oneness of everything. And that is what is coming through in the Langar. When you sit down, when you have no hierarchy, when you do not ask the person next to you who you are, when you get up and serve, it's that belief in the spiritual oneness of everything that comes through. Now, the state cannot provide that. The state cannot, and secularism cannot provide that. No socialist theory can provide that. So I think it's a very different context. The epistemology of Langar is very different. Can it be replicated elsewhere? Yes, it can be. We have held a number of programs in the Qatar was only one of them for the last 2-3 years, because one of the things we are trying to promote at the United Nations is a Langar Day. Okay, now there are many sort of days, and there's a yoga day, there's other days. We're trying to promote a Langar Day, and I'm really glad that Harmeet took it on behalf of Singh Sabha, that yes, they will start funding it, and hopefully other gurdwaras will come. And it will be a great thing to showcase what this is how a community has eliminated Langar, not just for itself, but for everybody around that area in Punjab, in many parts of India. So why doesn't the UN learn from the principles of this? And whenever we have had, and Ivan has held a number of side events in New York at the UN, and also we've had one or two at Geneva, diplomats have been quite interested, very intrigued. How does this system work? One of the questions some people envious says, of course, this makes people dependable, doesn't it? I said, well, you go and find a dependable Sikh somewhere, and I will then give a prize to you. It doesn't make people dependable. Okay? They stand on their feet, and that's why Sikhs are quite successful everywhere. So there's a huge amount of concept behind it.
That's really interesting. Can I now bring in Harmeet back into this? Yeah. First of all, Harmeet, you might want to comment on that last point that just Dave raised about the idea that we develop a World Langar Day or something like that. Well, just share your thoughts about that and what work you were able to do within Singh Sabha, and what maybe some of the other Sikh bodies could do to advance this. Let's just deal with that, and then I'm going to come back to some of the other points that I've got about Langar.
Sure. I mean, look, one of the key things when we got involved with the Sabha was, of course, the day-to-day stuff, but more importantly, is raising not the profile, but the message of Sikhi, right? The advocacy that was lacking for years. At the end of the day, we don't have a state. We've got to do our own fighting. Islam's got multiple states. The Jewish faith has got one, of course, Christian countries all over the world. And ultimately, decisions, policies are made at bodies like the UN. That's where the NGOs, the nations come together. That's where ideas are thrashed out. That's where things become policy and then law that impact people's lives. And sadly, we've confined Sikhi to just the Gurdwara or to Punjabis, and that's it. But, if we really truly believe that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was Jagat Guru for the world, then Guru Sahib's message of Gurbani needs to go out to the world, needs to actually impact people, the way they live, the way economies are organized. When was the last time anyone sat back and said, right, what was Guru Nanak Dev Ji's economic policy? What was Guru Gobind Singh Ji's social political policy? What kind of world did they want us to live in? No one takes the principles that are in Gurbani and how they can be implemented in actual real life policies. Linking back to your earlier question about, right, even today there's hunger. What's the causes of it? Are the agencies failing? Ultimately, I'm using it in inverted commas, the sort of third world, the causes are normally poverty or conflict. And think about the beauty of Langar, right? Bhai Ganesh didn't see a difference between Vari or his friend. He served. And that's what you need when conflicts happen. You need to make sure the civilian is getting fed, whatever happens, no conditions attached. That's the concept of Langar playing out there. When it comes to poverty, again, the economics of Langar is beautiful, right? It's the economics of accumulation. You're going from the economics of accumulation, growing your wealth, to the economics of contribution, taking that wealth and using it for the betterment of all of society. And one of the beauties of Langar that the concept that can be used anywhere in the world, even if there isn't a gurdwara. Any society can, in theory, use it. Is just realizing, look at the economies of scale of langar. If you cook together as a large group, if you're suffering from, if you're in a region where there's low incomes, for example, rather than each family cooking individually, imagine working together as a community. The economies of scales make sense there. It uplifts you. And going back to Dr. Saad's points about, you don't find dependent Sikhs. It doesn't grow dependency. In fact, there's a massive multiplier effect, because if you can put food on the table, you can get an education, you can put your kids through school, you can focus on healthcare, you can move up the social mobility ladder. That's the beauty of Langar, is it takes those at the lowest rungs and take them all the way up. And we see that. And the Sikh model is perfect, right? Think about the Sikhs who've left Punjab, set up Gurdwara around the world, going back a century. They came over to take London. They came here with nothing but the suitcase, or even didn't have a suitcase. They had nothing. But they built the Gurdwara, that community spirit in the Langar, where they worked together, did seva together, ate together, built connections together. There's a massive multiplier effect there. Those things led to more development. The beauty of it is the circular economy. As you become more prosperous, you then give back to the Langar, whether that's through your time, whether that's the physical food or monetary donations. So it creates a beautiful system of earning, giving, but more importantly, then empowering those less off.
Yeah, and of course, there's something profoundly uplifting and profoundly nurturing about participating in community. And certainly, I think in some senses, one of the challenges we face at the moment is within modernity, you could say, and within the kind of social media driven mindsets, that we've become very atomized as individuals, fragmented, and that can go to family, community level. Whereas Langar is kind of like, it's an embodied experience, isn't it? It's actually bringing people together in embodied experience, and there's something really fundamentally human about that we've lost as a society.
So you absolutely. I mean, you look at that last point. You're absolutely right. Right, we're living in a more technological world where we're more connected and disconnected physically, and nothing brings people together like a shared meal. There's nothing that reconnects humanity at its most basic level. Just sitting together on the floor, having a simple meal. That humanness, nothing else replicates that. You can have AI, you can have self-driven cars, but actually a simple, nourishing, warm, cooked meal in Langar with the power of Gurbani behind it, nothing can match it.
Let me just throw in slightly push back a bit and maybe more of a critical kind of point. And some people argue that Langar has become corrupted, that its original kind of purpose was to provide a nourishing meal for everybody who needs it, yeah? But today it's become a bit more like a kind of 5-star meal. It's, it's kind of extravagant food, and it's become a bit of a status symbol. People put on the Langar to show their own power and wealth. I remember many in 1984. I went to Darbar Sahib. That was the first time before the attack, actually, and I had Langar in the Guru Ramdas Langar, and I can still remember they gave me these huge fulkes, and they put some sabji, and I think it was dal on the. I didn't even know how to eat it, because it's not easy eating with dal on a fulka. But now you go there, and there's thalia, there's kheer, there's kind of. Now, what do you say about that? I mean, is there a need for some kind of wake-up call, that we need to think less about the kind of presentation and more about the purpose of it?
You are right there. So we have slightly lost our ways, and we've forgotten the core principle and point of Langar, which was just to provide a nourishing meal. Now, I till this day, I've never met anyone who's gone to Guru Ramdas Langar at Darbar Sahib and walked away complaining. And that's the most simple thing. It is just dal, fulka, and kheer. That's it. No one ever complains, and that's it. That we still should take example from that. Simplicity is the best. For one, is obviously it's more efficient. Cooking a simple dal, fulka, prashada is more efficient. It means you can do more with the limited resources. Now, if the power and point of Langar was to feed as many people as well as possible, then it makes sense. Keep the item you're producing as simple as possible. We have fallen into the trap of trying to outdo each other. 5-star Langars. We need pizza. We need chips. We need $5 sabji. Sometimes you see the reels on TikTok of we need 8 khane thalia now because we're making so many things, and that we are losing and we've gone away from the point of Langar. I can't imagine in Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time, Guru Amar Das Ji's, the Sevadas going around and saying, "Inniya sabji dal banani." It was, we need to make simple food to feed as many people as possible, so they have a nourished meal and they can get on with their lives. That was the purpose of it. Now the whole purpose has become the actual, the variety of the spread, and that is kind of a sign of a sort of capitalist corruption of it. We need to show as much as we need to fill as many of the carne as possible, and that is an injustice, and it's a disservice to the concept of Langar, because the beauty was the simplicity, and we have somewhat gone away from it. But I know deep down we all, Gurdwara Prabandhs are at the forefront of that. They should take a leading role, and I've been involved. And it's difficult. People want as many things served as possible, but the economics don't make sense. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The simplicity, we need to go back to basics sometimes, and this is one of the ways.
I do want to ask you one more question, and I'm going to go to Ivan after that, and that's particular because you were Secretary of Singh Sabha until recently, and I did hear a report recently, just very recently, that there's been some concerns about the hygiene standards at the Gurdwara. I don't know if you can shed any light on that, because that's very worrying, given that Singh Sabha is our central Gurdwara from where we should be taking a lead.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. So I think they had their as anyone's aware, any langar, so any sort of kitchen that's serving food to the public, whether it's paid or not, has to have the basic hygiene standards, and they get inspected by the local authority quite regularly. So I know I've heard Park Avenue recently, unfortunately, failed that. It is unfortunate. It's not a case of sort of lifting our jugga, getting us at dead nanga, but it's unfortunate. It's happened. It is embarrassing. It is obviously worrying. We're happy to help improve that, because fundamentally it's Sanji Taya, it's Guru's house. We don't want to have that embarrassment in the community. At the end of the day, the purpose of hygiene ratings is to make sure Gurdwara are safe. What gets served there is good for the Sangat. It's not going to harm anyone. And it's ironic, as a Qawm, we pride ourselves on our Sattamta, right? But you often find in Langar where there's sometimes a lack of discipline, and there can be challenges in instilling the right behavior culture. We don't do that. Now, Guru Nanak Road has 5 stars, and plenty of Gurdwara around the country that do immense great work. It is always one of the challenges where you have Langars where you've got Sevadars, where you've got anyone coming and going. It's always very difficult to strike that balance of discipline and also making it a welcoming place. So no, I'm sure the Sevadar days are going to be working hard to get it up to track. We're ready to stand by and help them to get it back on track. And we hope every other Gurdwara is always taking things like this seriously. Don't fall back on these standards. Make sure you get the basics right. So we can then actually help the world. If we can't get our own house in order, how are we going to help the wider community?
Okay, Ivan, I'm going to come back to you now. We are kind of getting to the last 10, 15 minutes of the show, but I just wanted to say if there's anything that you wanted to pick up on what's been said so far, but also I wanted to ask you about the kind of cultural dimension, because Langar is very much associated with the Sikh faith, the Sikh community. It's seen as a Sikh kind of religious practice. How can we try to? What do we need to do to say, look, this may originate from the Sikhs, although, as I said in my opening, Langar goes back further than that. How can we, in a climate where there's lots of kind of suspicion, cultural kind of prejudice? We've seen with Trump. There's this kind of far right now, almost anti-multiculturalism. How can we try to convince people that Langar isn't there as some kind of Sikh imperial project, that somehow Sikhs want to, as it were, expand their influence on others, but it's there to serve humanity? How do we break that kind of suspicion?
Talking to other people. For example, a couple of years ago, a couple of friends of mine from Spain, they went to India, and I asked Jasdev what kind of activities they could do, what kind of place it would be worth for them to visit. He gave a couple of gurdwaras. They went there, and it is from talking to people where how you bring newcomers to show them what is really about, because maybe people think that you eat langar as a non-sick and you become sick at the end of the meal, which is not, of course. Another example was this February in New York, we organized a side event which meant, or which was supposed to showcase how, from the Sikh perspective, social solidarity is promoted. And one of our colleagues, Dr. Balbinder Bogal, introduced what is doing any Gurdwara and any Langar to prop out social solidarity. Of course, he introduced the concept of Langar, and believe it or not, a couple of people from the panel went to a Gurdwara in New Jersey, near in front of New York. Then they came back to us and they were quite surprised about the kind of atmosphere that you can feel it. I mean, for you it's very common practice. For me and my colleague Albert, when we went to London, it was quite something that respectively we already felt back in our countries, a certain feeling of familiarity with the people. We were eating with Dr. Rai, and people were approaching us first to talk to Dr. Rai, and then to ask us about our job here in Geneva, in New York, because they heard about what we were doing at the Gurdwara. And for me, and I think for my colleague Albert, it was the same feeling. They were approaching in the same way when we, back in our respective countries, when we go back to the cities or villages where our parents or grandparents are from. This kind of familiarity, where people, friends of our relatives, approach us asking us about our life. This kind of certain hospitality and warm atmosphere of, let's say, what people say now, a safe space, some place where you could be without any kind of distinction of your socioeconomic status. So I think it's bringing people to Gurdwaras, bringing people to Langar, promoting it not only at the international level, but also within the national level, because, as you mentioned, the rise of intolerance is in every Western country, and the sooner we start, not only at the day, but also the sooner we start with children, showing that diversity is something that reinforces our societies. It is something that make societies more resilient, but also enrich societies. So voila, it's you have. If I'm not wrong, every king or queen in England goes at least once to partake Langar. So it's voila, it's a project to promote it and to make people aware of what is all about, which is not only food. For me, the most striking part, and the thing that has to be promoted the most, is the one that we see the least. It's not only about food, but it is about uniting social links with people, and in a very egalitarian level. And that it is the hardest to communicate.
That's fantastic. Just there, I'm going to come to you now. We are now getting into wrapping up, but that last point that Ivan said, that there seems to be some real hope that there's a suspicion that somehow Langar is a kind of backdoor way of converting people to become Sikhs. That was never the intention of Langar. But then, how do we upscale? How do we really kind of expand because I mean, Sikh communities are limited. You know, we in West London and other places we have high density of Sikhs, and therefore you do get a lot more people from other communities participating in Langar. Delhi is probably the best example, and the Darbars have we mentioned that, where you have possibly more non-Sikhs than Sikhs who take the Langar. But just Dev, how do we begin to say in the UK, how do we take Langar to those communities where there are no Sikhs?
Okay, I think Ivan's brought in some very interesting points, because him and Albert came to Southall to Singh Sabha, and within half an hour they were able to identify nearly 6 sustainable development goals of the UN taking place there in the Langar Hall. Things like gender equality, community, lack of hierarchy, non-discrimination, lack of poverty, lack of hunger, and climate change in a way, because it's all vegetarian, so it's not dependent on Mr. McDonald having big, large fields just to feed cattle and then polluting the air with methane. So it was interesting that these two guys within half an hour saw the beauty and the extraordinary, the concept of Langar. Now, where we are lacking is, one, the Sikhs don't really have a national, let alone international platforms. We are the only organization with the consultative status at the UN. That means we can go to all the institutions of the UN, where we try and introduce a Sikh perspective to things. At the national level as well, I think we need to promote this idea of Langar more. Bring people. I think people, non-Sikhs who know about the Langar, they come, they eat the Langar and go away. And the one thing that strikes, as Ivan said, is there is no transactional pressure there. It's not, you come to Langar, you come to Gurdwara, now read this Sikh book, read this book about Gursikhi or Guru Nanak or etc. They come, they put a handkerchief on their head, take their shoes off, eat and go. That's it. Nobody's asking them any questions.
Yeah.
That is an extraordinary, much say, uniqueness about Langar, that there is no selfishness there. It's all about humanity. And that is what really amazes people. And I think by inviting people to Gurdwara, and maybe we can hold good Langar in some public places from time to time and show the event. I mean, Parminder Singh on Guru Nanak Nishkam Jatha held it at the World, is it the Parliament of
Council of
Religions?
Churches, yeah.
Yeah, in Barcelona. That was quite extraordinary. We were trying to get some Gurdwaras to come together and hold it in the World Conference on Racism and Sustainable Development. But my arts of persuasion are not that strong. But I hope Harmeet has started a ball rolling. I hope the next committees and other Gurdwaras will come together and see, Guru Nanak's message. You can stand in the Gurdwaras and say it's universal, 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 but it's not going to become universal without you taking the steps to make it universal.
No, that's really good. Harmeet, just bring you back in there, because we have some examples from in London, like SWAT, for example. We've got Langar Aid, people like that. We have various kind of. I mean, I was so moved. I think it was the SWAT people who did the Christmas Langar down on Euston Road somewhere. I think it was. I can't remember where, outside a tube station. And they're very, very moving and very inspirational. But how come every Gurdwara not have an outreach Langar? Why can't every Gurdwara do this? Street Langar. Harmeet.
Oh, of course, where there's a will, there's a way. The beauty of Langar is it can instill so much inspiration for people to physically go and do things. On the grassroots, that's what Langar is all about, helping those at the most need, those on the front line, those living on the streets. Now the aim always is, it starts as a hand out, but you hope that it becomes a hand up. They are nourished,
Yeah.
they get inspired, they meet people. Sometimes you hear stories, right? They get talking, they maybe find a job from the back of that. Maybe it encourages them to come into the Gurdwara, not stay in the street. So let's hope there's more of this keeps happening at the grassroots level. But I think our focus, as especially those involved in running institutions in Gurdwara, should be about broadening the actual concept and the virtues behind the principles of Langar and trying to instill it in everything that happens in society.
What about networking with non-Sikh organizations? In the sense, it's like a bit like a kind of technology transfer, if you like. It's a transferring of competencies. Would that? I mean, if we're saying that Langar is not some kind of method for preaching, in the way in which I think Dr. just there saying hinted at, say, the church was operating in Africa, another place where they were giving food with one hand and the Bible with the other. Why can't we connect with, say, Christian organizations, Muslim and others as well, Hindu mandirs, and say, look, why don't we really make this a massive, the credit still goes to the Sikhs, but we don't need to own this, or do we need to own it?
Well, look, the dharmic driver behind it is always unique to Sikhi, and many of these other places of worships are very different the way they operate. They are sort of 9 to 5, or maybe, what I mean, not 9 to 5. They only open a certain day of the week, so it's an alien concept for them. For us, the Gurdwara, because it's the hub of the community, it is 24/7. The presence of the Guru is what makes the Langar so special, in that it's what brings the Sevadars there, and the ancillary service of Langar then obviously operates itself. By all means, we can work with everyone, and I know many Gurdwara do. I know in West London, in Southall, we used to get some of our donations from other faith-based charities who had surplus food stocks. So in a way, there are great ways for them to work together, because even they recognise Langar's, the physical operations. We have the biggest sort of kitchens available in any institution. So there are ways that institutions are already working together from other faiths, and absolutely there are ways that we should work together more going forward.
Yeah, and we've got some great examples with Langar on campus. We just a few weeks ago we had Langar on campus at Warwick, and there were over 1,000 students from all backgrounds. They're just kind of, students enjoy free food anyway, but it was still profound to see that, and we have it all over there. Harmeet, we are now coming to the end of the show. So, is there any final thoughts that you wanted to share with the viewers before I ask the others, and then we'll wrap up here?
No, absolutely. I think one of the key things I've learned in the last few years is groups like SHRG, Sikh Human Rights Group, do remarkable work in the background. We're often not aware of them. We know of the sort of the other big groups who do work on the ground, whether it's Khalsa Aid, whether it's SWAT, they do immense great work. But actually, this is an area where we have very little involvement, and we always have had. We've only got one group globally which has a UN consultative status. That's the Sikh Human Rights Group. I think more people need to be aware of it. Those who've got the skills need to get involved. It's a great platform to actually practice our faith and get Guru Nanak Dev Ji's message implemented on a global scale.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you, Harmeet, for joining us today. Ivan, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with our viewers before we wrap up?
Yes, first stressing the social aspect of Langar, and second that we don't have sometimes we don't have to look that far away to find solutions to certain things. And one thing, for example, that was born within the Sikh community is Langar, and it is something that not only for the material aspect, which is giving food, but also for this kind of construction of a society a little bit more egalitarian, is something that it has to be promoted, and the Sikh community has to be proud of it, because it's not something that you see every day on every community. This kind of approach, comprehensive approach to something.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ivan, for your fantastic comments and thoughts. Just there, I'm going to leave the last word with you. Are there any final thoughts that you've got, but also maybe thinking about some of the work that we're trying to do on the channel and looking at the global challenges, maybe what we might be doing next time in the new year, maybe now?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for hosting these programs anyway, and it's given us Sikh Human Rights Group some sort of a a platform to show work, because then I think one of the skills that you have is to take complex issues and make them not simplify them, but make them understandable at the general level. I have to say that Ivan and Albert, there are two representatives in Geneva, and they go to New York quite often on behalf of for Sikh Human Rights Group, have done quite a lot of legwork on the Langar Day thing, and it's nearly there. I hope the new committee will now back us, because I think sometime in the next few months at the UN Geneva, they're willing to hold a Langar thing at the UN and make it into an annual thing. If not, at least I hope that through your platform I can appeal to other gurdwaras to come forth, because anything like this does need the finances to lobby, to convince countries. At the UN, you have to convince countries to be able to do something. Okay? When a few countries come together and say this is a good idea, they will do. And the next time, I think we've just been to COP, the biggest climate conference in the world. There were about 60,000 people there in Belém, and we took Baba Seva Singh Khadur Saab's team there, and we also took some paintings drawings made by children from the Guru Nanak school in the Khalsa school of Singh Sabha. They were showcased there, and talk about how the Sikh approach to climate and environment is also quite unique, and and we've created a network of NGOs now who have signed into that, and hopefully in the next 2-3 years we'll bring that concept forward as well. Thank you again
That's great.
for this
Thank
platform.
You. Yeah, no, thank you. Some great work that you're doing, and hopefully that we can work with the channel as well, and we can work together to serve the community, because that's really the only reason why we do these things. So today, Ajati, we were talking about the concept of Langar, and we heard from Dr. Jasdev Singh Wright, Harmeet Singh, and also Ivan, all three of them who have been working closely with the Sikh Human Rights Group and the UN. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਈਵਨ ਜੁੜੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਬਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਫਿਊਚਰ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਰੂੰਗੇ ਵੀ ਲੰਗਰ ਦੀ ਕਨਸੈਪਟ ਕਿੱਡੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕਨਸੈਪਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਵੈਸੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਹਰਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਗਰੀਬ ਕਾ ਮੂੰਹ ਗੁਰੂ ਕੀ ਗੋਲਕ, and this line captures everything about the Langar, the ethical imperative to address poverty and inequality. And Langar is a practical manifestation of this important tenet of Sikhi. But it's not simply about providing free food. It's not, in that sense, a charitable cause, as we've heard from our guests. Langar is about bringing humanity together. The implications of Langar run much deeper than just giving food. It demonstrates that community is forged not through the accumulation of personal wealth or greed, but through practical actions of shared labor, of shared wealth, of shared humility, of shared love and shared food. And in a world that's warming, where climate disasters are fracturing societies and intensifying conflict and inequality, the concept of Langar stands as a living model of resilience, compassion, and human solidarity. And I would say that it would almost be a crime if Sikhs kept this beautiful practice just to ourselves, and therefore it's a duty on us. If we say, as it's then this is the challenge for Sikhs, is how can we give Langar to the whole world? And we should be thinking big, because our gurus did ask us to think about humanity. So आज दे program ਦੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਆ. We're going to finish here, and we will join you again next time. So once again, thanks to the guests, thanks to the channel for hosting us. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ